Meiosis is a division of a germ cell involving two fissions or divisions of the nucleus and giving rise to four gametes or sex cells, each possessing half the number of chromosomes of the original cell. This is an example of meiosis. This is the original cell, the germ cell. We see that it has 4 chromosomes. In the human body, our cells have 46 chromosomes, but just as an example here, for it to be easier, we're going to go with 4 chromosomes. This cell, we say it is diploid because it has 2n equals 4. It has homologous pairs of chromosomes, which means two chromosomes that are of the same size and same shape. We call them homologous. And cells that have homologous pairs, we call them diploid cells. They have 2n chromosomes. Here, 2n is equal to 4. So the first step is that each chromosome is going to duplicate and become made up of 2 chromatids instead of being a chromosome made up of 1 chromatid. So after this duplication, what happens is that the homologous pairs will line up and pair up together, and they will line up at the equatorial plate. They will form the equatorial plate at the equator of the cell, or the middle. This will prepare them for division. And what will happen here, one entire chromosome of the homologous pair is going to split. So, when the cell divides into 2, we don't have chromatids splitting apart from the same chromosome. We have 2 chromosomes in the same homologous pair, each one traveling to a different site of the cell. So now we will end up with 2 daughter cells. Each one has 2 chromosomes instead of 4. Here we say they are haploid. They have n instead of 2n number of chromosomes. And now each of these cells is going to divide again. This division is going to be exactly the same as mitosis. Each chromatid will go to one side of the cell, and then the cell will split into 2 cells. So we will end up with 4 daughter cells, each having n number of chromosomes and 1 chromatid. This is how the division of gametes occurs. We start with one germ cell with 2n chromosomes. It is diploid. We end up with 4 gametes that are haploid with 1n. We have half the number of chromosomes now. And now these daughter cells, these gametes, are going to differentiate, which means they are going to specialize to either become ova or sperm cells. So this depends on where this is happening. If this is happening in the male body, in the testis, then these gametes will differentiate into sperm. If this is happening in the female body, in the ovaries, then these gametes will differentiate into ova. This is a germ cell. It contains the cell membrane, the cytoplasm, and the nucleus. And inside the nucleus, we have the chromosomes. Here, in the initial state, the chromosomes look like threads, so we call them chromatin. They are not chromosomes yet. The first step is that chromatin condense. They become chromosomes. So we will play the video now, and you will see the first step. Here we have chromatin condensing into chromosomes. And this is how we end up with the chromosomes. Each has 2 sister chromatids attached to each other. This cell has 2 homologous pairs. So this is a diploid germ cell. It has 2n equals 4 chromosomes. So the next step is that homologous pairs will arrange together at the equatorial plate. They will line up together, and each chromosome of the pair of chromosomes will separate to one side of the cell. So we had the homologous pair lining up at the equator, forming the equatorial plate. Then each chromosome of the pair is going to go to one side of the cell. So we will end up with half the chromosomes on one side and the other half on the other side. And the cell will divide into 2. Now we have half the chromosomes in one daughter cell and the other half in the other daughter cell. Now these chromosomes again will line up at the equator, forming the equatorial plate, and now the chromatids will separate to different sides in the cell, just like mitosis. The second phase of meiosis is exactly like mitosis. Then, after the chromatids have separated into opposite sides of the cell, each of these two daughter cells is going to again separate into two more daughter cells so that we end up with four gametes, as we said. And we also said that each gamete has to have n instead of 2n, so half the number of chromosomes. So now these cells are dividing again, and we will end up with the four gametes. Each gamete is going to have two chromosomes instead of four here. In the human body, our cells have 46 chromosomes, so the gametes have 23 chromosomes. So this is what happens during meiosis. This concludes our lesson for meiosis, and hopefully the video gave enough visual aid to understand how this process occurs.